I guess I was about 6 years old when I discovered that there was something about putting marks on a paper that really fascinated me. I always thought I was going to be an artist. I think Jan did too. Actually, we met in a restaurant. She was a student in one of the classes I was teaching as a graduate assistant, and I recognized her when I walked into the restaurant. She just happened to be sitting by herself. So I thought, do I dare ask her? Well, I guess I'll go ahead, take a chance. It's a dual show, and it's also a show that covers 50 years of making art. My wife, Janet, has done half of the drawings, and we combine our efforts for the ceramics in addition to creating our own pieces. My tendency has been to try a lot of different things. I couldn't tear myself away from wanting to draw people and figures. The oldest painting in the room is the one of our second oldest daughter, Melissa. At that point in time, I was not only doing something like portraits, but I was also doing things like the abstract piece that represents a Colorado landscape. The West Valley Art Museum is still one of the most important small museums around. It has an international collection of costume and international prints. People should try to get out to see what's here.
My name's Joey Lucidi, and I'm the owner of Westside Concepts, and we're proud owners of the new Cantina Hueros. Cantina Hueros is our newest concept. It mixes traditional Mexican food with a little bit more modern taqueria. We're definitely not a Tex-Mex, and we don't do a lot of Sonoran cooking. It is going to come a lot of that Baja style. I grew up in San Diego. We grew up going down to Tijuana and grabbing street tacos, as well as going down to Old Town San Diego and grabbing the traditional enchiladas and such. So this is just kind of a mix of what I grew up with. I think our bar is bar none the best bar in the West Valley. Obviously our margaritas are awesome, but down to our house margarita, our prickly pear. But we do some pretty cool drinks. We do a tequila old fashioned, an Aztec old fashioned, which not many places in the West Valley have a tequila list like we do, with some extravagant ones that they can't find in the stores. We hired a guy named Lalo Coda, pretty world-renowned artist, does a lot with Day of the Dead, and so we tried to put our own little spin on it, mix that Southern California culture, Chicano culture back into our restaurant, so that's where the art comes from. The reception's been pretty amazing. We've broken records in every store we've ever opened in the first 2 weeks. COVID's changed all of our procedures. Every staff member's wearing masks. We are cleaning and sanitizing between every station, which we've always done. We've just put a bigger priority on it. Washing hands, I think that's the most important thing, is that mandatory every 10 minutes, no matter what. They're walking in the kitchen and they're washing their hands. I live in this area and I love the Northwest Valley. North Peoria is growing rapidly, just like all of our other concepts. We're locally owned. All the money stays here in the Valley. We try really hard to deal with local suppliers, and we're proud of that. And we're proud of the jobs we create. So if you like any of our other concepts, whether it be Haymaker, The Social, Northwest Coffee, Firehouse Event Center, we hope that you'll like Cantina Hueros just as much.
Child Crisis Arizona, we have a vision. That vision is safe kids in strong families. We exist to prevent child abuse and neglect, and also provide intervention services in the community, along with early education and parent education. In the state of Arizona, there are 13,000 children who are in the child welfare system looking for their forever home. At Child Crisis Arizona, we exist to prevent child abuse and neglect. We are looking for forever families who are willing to open up their homes and their heart to help some of these children. We're excited to join Peoria, and we are located in the Peoria Resource Center. What we are trying to do is recruit families in the community who are interested in becoming foster parents. At Child Crisis Arizona, we are fostering the most vulnerable children in the child welfare system. So if you're interested in becoming a foster parent, please come and see us. Also, we'd encourage anyone in the community to come and participate in our free workshops and parenting classes. So for more information, childcrisisaz.org, and we will be in the Peoria Resource Center on Tuesday mornings and Thursday afternoons.
Everything is made fresh. Everything is made from scratch with recipe items. And our breakfast is our quickest service. We try to get it out. And that is eggs, potatoes, cheddar cheese, spicy mayo, and she's adding one of our hottest salsas, Inferno. We don't have a lot of space. It's more, we have to have individual key people in key areas and key stations and moving quickly and moving together. And that is our choice Angus steak that we prepare here in-house. So for breakfast we have bacon and chorizo. We also have steak or a plain egg potato. And it has eggs, potatoes, cheddar cheese, and spicy mayo. And then some of our most popular lunch items are our chicken and steak tacos. And we also have pork, sauteed shrimp, and we have grilled veggies, and we also have a sauteed veggie option.
My name's Bob Young. I've been playing pickleball about 2.5 years. Pickleball is a little bit like tennis on a smaller court, and it's a faster game. It's easier to learn, and more people, elderly people, are getting involved in it. You serve just like you would in tennis. It's a different kind of a ball, a different paddle. We have what's called a kitchen, which is the first 8 feet on the court. And you can't stand in there, and slam the ball. You have to be behind that line. Golf, you walk around and you drink beer. There's no cardio to golf. This game, you're active. You get the cardio here. It's good exercise. We play Monday, Wednesday, and Friday here from 7 till 11 in the morning. You have to sign up, and you just take turns. People that are out here mostly have been athletic or been in some kind of a sport. It's competitive, but it's fun competitive. We play doubles, 2 and 2. You rotate partners, and you meet a lot of people. We have a lot of friends here. Just being out here is a good memory.
Apendex is, of course, an indoor rock climbing gym that really focuses on its community and each member and how it can grow you in the sport as well as make you stronger continuously. When you think about coming into climbing, it's not something that you think, oh, I'm getting a workout. You're actually having fun, but really you're working out your entire body. And you'll start with a color-coded route and you'll see all the holds of the same color, and that's what you're going to be utilizing to get up and down the wall. There's rope stations all around which you can actually move to fit to which routes you want to do. Of course, safety is our #1 priority here. So really you don't fall, you just kind of pop off and then you can get back on it and keep climbing. All the walls are new, we got brand new holds, so that means we have a whole bunch of new routes. The coolest thing about this sport that a lot of people don't think about is how easy it is to progress in it. If you ever need anything or you're having trouble with a route, come get one of us. Any excuse to get out behind the desk to go help some people climb or show somebody climb, we're all about it. We actually have personal coaching, we have quarterly seminars. We also have a kids climbing club. It ranges from 6 years to 18 years old, and they can come here and they really learn how to be a part of the sport, and not only that, they learn a very team-like mentality, which is really important for kids these days. For anybody who is hesitant or scared to actually climb, don't be. Nobody here is going to judge you on what skill level you are. Everybody here just wants to see you get better. I've seen people of all ages, of all sizes come in here and have an absolute great time. I've seen it change people's lives. We want anybody and everybody to come in.
Thank you for having me. I am Regina Nixon. I am the Executive Director for the Phoenix Conservatory of Music. So we are a 501c3 nonprofit community music school. We've been around for 21 years. We've done a lot of work in the North and West Valley of our great metropolis. And we really wanted to work with the city of Peoria. We've been actually historically working with the city of Peoria for almost that entire 20 years. We've done parks and rec classes and programs with schools, and most recently we are partnering with Ombudsman Charter School West on 95th Avenue in Peoria to offer their students, which are predominantly an at-risk population, with some very creative outlets and music programming that includes songwriting and electronic music, as well as skill building, which is really exciting. So we meet with those students once or twice a week. Last year we met with them for about 3 to 4 hours a week. And we worked with them on skill building musically, so learning how to play instruments, learning about song form, learning about harmony and tonal function, and allowed them to take some of their life experiences and their creativity and take those skill sets that they were learning, merge them together, and actually start writing their own songs. So we were working specifically with a program called BandLab EDU, which is a free cloud-based program for students, so they don't have to buy like a really expensive DAW. They can access it through any device, so a tablet, a cell phone, or computer, desktop, laptop. So we do a full range of programs. We actually do after-school programs where we send teaching artists to the school sites to work with the schools. These are typically with Title I schools, and we partner, and either we find grant funds to pay for the programming, like we are with the Ombudsman Charter, or we work with the school and they have grant programs to pay for programming. But the people that never pay are the students, right? So cost is not a barrier to participation. And it's really important to engage students in that very vulnerable after-school time where if they don't have something positive to do, they will fill it with something, and not always something super great, right? So that's really important. And so we know that music can be a catalyst to help young people fill their potential. And we're not necessarily developing great musicians. We are developing great people using music as a catalyst. Music helps us to communicate. Music helps us to be disciplined. Music helps us to do things like project manage and manage our time and come up with priorities and set goals. But it, on a human level, allows us to collaborate and to communicate and to express ourselves. So students are walking away learning how to be producers. They're walking away learning how to be engineers. We have some of our alumni who are post-sound production engineers for movies. Right? And I mean, think about, you have to have a musician's ear in order to engage with that and to do that. I think one of the biggest upcoming musical instruments that Berkeley is now allowing auditions for is the laptop. Right? So you have students who have never played a traditional instrument before, but what they can do to manipulate sounds and create sounds intentionally, which is the definition of music, with their computers is phenomenal. And so I think that students today can engage in music making in very non-traditional ways much easier than ever before. And the career opportunities that are available for those young people who do engage in that are doing nothing but growing. We are so lucky to be working with Peoria. We thank the Peoria Arts Commission for their support. In addition to working with the students in the charter school, we also serve close to 50 to 75 residents through our regular programming. And so just know that, you know, we're here, we're a community resource, and if anybody needs us, we're a phone call or an email away. We have a website, pcmrocks.org, so it's www.pcmrocks.org, or you can give us a call at 602-353-9900.
My name is Nick. This is the All-Stars. I want to thank you for joining in. We're going to sing you some statehood song days and some Valentine's Day songs. So get up, join us, and dance for this one. We go together, better than birds of a feather, you and me. We change the weather, Yeah, I'm feeling keyed in December when you're around me. I've been dancing on top of cars and stumbling out of bars. I follow you through the dark, can't get enough. You're the medicine in the pain, the tattoo inside my brain. Baby, you know it's obvious, I'm a sucker for you. Say the word and I'll go anywhere blindly. I'm a sucker for you. Yeah, any road you take, you know that you'll find me. I'm a sucker for all those material things no one knows about you. About you, about you, about you. And you're making the typical me break my typical rules. It's true, I'm a sucker for you. Don't complicate it, 'cause I know you and you know everything about me. I can't remember, yeah, all of the things I don't remember when you're around me. I've been dancing on top of cars and stumbling out of bars. I follow you through the dark, can't get enough. You're the medicine in the pain, the tattoo inside my brain. And baby, you know it's obvious, I'm a sucker for you. Say the word and I'll go anywhere blindly. I'm a sucker for you. Yeah, any road you take, you know that you'll find me. I'm a sucker for all the material things no one knows about you. About you, about you, about you. And you're making the typical me break my typical rules. It's true, I'm a sucker for you. Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm Nick.
I'm Melissa. And I'm Annie.
I'm Mark, and that's Cheese.
Woo. We want to thank you again for joining us. We are the All-Stars. I've been dancing on top of cars and stumbling out of bars. Follow you through the dark, can't get enough. You're the medicine in the pain, the tattoo inside my brain. And baby, you know it's obvious, I'm a sucker for you. Say the word and I'll go anywhere blindly. I'm a sucker for you. Yeah, any road you take, you know that you'll find me. I'm a sucker for all those material things no one knows about you. About you, about you, about you. And you're making the typical me break my typical rules. It's true, I'm a sucker for you. I'm a sucker for you. Woo. Thanks, everyone. We're gonna bring it down on this one, a nice little ballad. What would I do without your smart mouth pulling me in and you kicking me out? You got my head spinning, no kidding, I can't pin you down. What's going on in that beautiful mind? I'm on your magical mystery ride. You got my head spinning, no kidding, can't pin you down. My head's underwater, but I'm breathing fine. You're crazy and I'm out of my mind. 'Cause all of me loves all of you. Love your curves and all your edges, all your perfect imperfections. Give your all to me, I give my all to you. You're my end and my beginning. Even when I lose, I'm winning. 'Cause I give you all of me, and you give me all of you. How many times do I have to tell you? Even when you're crying, you're beautiful too. The world is beating you down. I am around through everything. You're my downfall, you're my muse, my worst distraction, my rhythm and blues. Got me singing, it's ringing in my for you. My head's underwater and I'm breathing fine. You're crazy and I'm out of my mind. 'Cause all of me loves all of you. Love your curves and all your edges, all your perfect imperfections. Give your all to me, I give my all to you. You're my end and my beginning. Even when I lose, I'm winning. 'Cause you give me all of me, and you give me all of you. You give me all of you. Cards on the table, they both showing hearts. Risking it all, though it's hard. 'Cause all of me loves all of you. Love your curves and all your edges, all your perfect imperfections. Give your all to me, I give my all to you. You're my end and my beginning. Even when I lose, I'm winning. 'Cause I give you all of me, and you give me all of you, and you give me all of me. I give you all of you, oh you. I've been doing a lot of contemporary songs, so we're gonna bring this one a little bit classic. You drumming this one?
I'll be happy to join you.
Thanks,
on this
Alyssa.
one. You're welcome.
I thought that dreams belonged to other men, 'cause each time I got close, they'd fall apart again.
I feared my heart would beat in secrecy.
I spent the nights alone. Oh, how could I have known that all my life I only needed you? Oh, almost paradise. We're knocking on heaven's door. Almost paradise. How could we ask for more? I swear that I can see forever in your eyes. Paradise.
I thought that perfect love was hard to find. I'd almost given up. It must have read my mind.
And all those dreams are safe for a rainy day. They're finally coming true. I'll share them all with you. 'Cause now we hold the future in our hands. Oh, almost paradise. We're knocking on heaven's door. Almost paradise. How could we ask for more? I swear that I can see forever in your eyes. Paradise. And in your arms, salvation's not so far away.
It's getting closer,
Closer every day. Almost paradise. We're knocking on heaven's door. Almost paradise. Thank you.
And last, my love has come along. My lonely days are over, and life is like a song. Oh yeah, at last, the skies above are blue. My heart was wrapped up in clover. The night I looked at you, I found a dream that I
This meeting will now come to order. The clerk will please call the roll.
Mayor Carlett.
Here.
Vice Mayor Edwards.
Here.
Councilmember Finn.
Here.
Councilmember Binswanger.
Here.
Councilmember Patina.
Here.
Councilmember Hunt.
Here.
And Councilmember Dunn.
Here.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the Peoria City Council special meeting of May 18th, 2021. We have one item on our study session agenda this evening, and that is regional transportation update. And I will turn it over to City Manager Jeff Tyne to begin.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Over the last year, this Council has held a series of discussions on regional transportation, and for good reason. Right now, as we speak, the Maricopa Association of Governments is coordinating with all cities here in the region to develop a new regional transportation program. Such a program would require an extension or expansion of the existing county half-cent sales tax. Earlier, you all had provided direction to staff regarding your multimodal priorities for the Northwest Valley region. And based on your feedback from all of you, as well as member agencies, we now have received scenarios from MAG for the planned transportation improvements over the next 20 years. So this is a very long-term implications that we're discussing, a number of pretty far-reaching impacts and important policy priorities that are woven into the discussions tonight. And so to help navigate this, we have our Intergovernmental Affairs Director, Thomas Atkins, to steer this, who has been steering the city's staff effort, and thanks. I'll pass it over to Mr. Atkins.
Well, thank you, Mr. Tyne. Mayor and Council, good evening. I'm happy to be here in front of you to provide a extremely exciting presentation on the possible extension of Proposition 400. This is the countywide transportation sales tax that funds, as Jeff said, the major transportation and transit programs within the region. Today's presentation has a bit of intrigue, but I hope that the presentation can provide some clarity on some of the big pieces that are moving forward. We also want to inform any of the viewing audience about the updated process that we're undertaking and some of the next steps that we will see. Along the way, we're going to highlight some of the Peoria priority projects that we have submitted, and we're going to see how they've fared in the various draft scenarios that have been prepared. Joining me from a distance in this presentation, out in the bullpen, is our Development and Engineering Director, Adina Lunn, our Public Works Director, Kevin Burke, our Peoria Utility Player and incoming Public Works Director, Jay Davies, and of course our Regional Transportation Sherpa, Deputy City Manager, Eric Strunk. Our goal is fairly straightforward and simple tonight, and that is to provide you with an update on the draft scenarios that have been prepared for the extension of Prop 400 and to receive your feedback on what's presented tonight. As a friendly reminder, the frequent and direct guidance from Mayor and Council is extremely helpful to staff as we participate and advocate on behalf of the city at the regional level. So let's buckle our seatbelts and begin this fantastic voyage. So before we hit the road, let's take a moment to sort of kick the tires and review where we've been and where we're headed. This presentation is going to begin with a very brief recap of Prop 400 and its importance to Peoria. We're then going to shift into an overview of the funding scenarios for a possible extension of Prop 400. Along the way, I'm going to highlight some of the regionally significant Peoria priorities. And then to bring it on home, I'm going to give an overview of the next steps that we can anticipate. The good news is that this road trip to a new regional transportation plan is moving into a phase where there is greater clarity and it is becoming a little bit easier to define what the future will hold for the region. Of course, I've got dedicated times in this presentation for Mayor and Council to engage and provide comment and feedback. But of course, at any point in the presentation, please feel free to interject and I'll be happy to respond. So let's get this show on the road. So as we start our journey, let's take a quick refresher and talk about transportation funding in general. In Peoria, we tend to think of transportation in terms of these three pillars, which are freeways, arterials, meaning streets and roads, and transit/bus service. These modes all have diverse funding streams that include local, regional, state, and even federal funding. But something that stands out, and I've tried to highlight it here in this slide, is that if you look at all three pillars, Proposition 400 funding is included in all three of them. This is what makes Prop 400 so unique and valuable to not just Peoria, but every other city within the region. It provides a versatility that other funding sources don't have, and a general magnitude that tends to be greater than other revenue sources as well. It's a very, very big deal. For any viewers that are new to the topic, I want to provide a very brief recap of what Prop 400 is and how it came to be. All the way back in 1985, Maricopa County voters approved a 20-year county-wide half-cent transportation sales tax to fund regional freeway projects, and I emphasize just freeway projects. This included the Loop 101. This tax was known as Prop 300. Towards the end of Prop 300, regional leaders realized that there were still additional transportation needs that Prop 300 had not yet funded. And so a consensus was developed amongst regional leaders, and ultimately the voters approved in 2004 another 20-year extension of the half-cent transportation sales tax for the county. A key difference, though, in this extension, which is Prop 400, is that the use of the funds were expanded from not just freeways, but to include also arterial projects and transit services. And it's really notable that transit is included in this because that represents an ongoing operational cost to a revenue stream that has a fixed term. Generally speaking, that's not the best practice, but it has been a useful one for the region. The types of projects that were funded by Prop 400 include the Loop 303 in the West Valley, light rail in Phoenix in the East Valley, arterial improvements throughout the region, and many bus routes. By the time Prop 400 expires at the end of 2025, the tax will have generated about $8.9 billion in revenue for the region. Current estimates suggest that if the tax were extended again, the tax would generate about $15 billion for the region over the next 20 years. So the odyssey that is Prop 400 extension, it's been ongoing for a while and has yet a ways to go. But we have passed some exciting mile markers, you might recall, such as multiple staff presentations to council and email updates. Who could forget our update in 2019 to council about our priorities? Oh boy, that was a classic, wasn't it? Well, tonight you're in for a real treat. We're going to present the MAG draft funding scenarios. Using state-of-the-art graphics, including JPEGs and memes, I'm going to attempt to show how Peoria priorities that we submitted, and here is a binder full of everything that we submitted, how they fare in the draft funding scenarios. As we bring this joyride to a close, I'm going to cover the next steps of the extension that will culminate in the possible extension of this tax in November of 2022. So, what is a draft scenario? Of these projects that we submitted as a region, and every city submitted projects for consideration and funding, MAG had the Herculean task of sorting through all of these projects, and these projects included freeway projects, arterial projects, bus projects, trail projects, you name it, a whole myriad of projects. MAG had the difficult task of sorting through those projects and assigning them a score or a rank. Using goals and measures that were adopted through the MAG policy committees, MAG ultimately was able to score essentially every project. But rather than just dump all of those projects in our lap and have the region attempt to sort through them, MAG has created these draft scenarios that serve as sort of a straw man and a starting point for regional discussions. The goal here is not that either of these draft scenarios be the final approved scenario, but rather a starting point that shows how funding at different levels could provide different types of projects. I also want to emphasize here that these funding projects that are listed are not necessarily unique to each category. This graphic shows a Venn diagram of the two overarching philosophies, which are new capacity and system optimization. These circles in the graph here don't really overlap that much, but the reality is what's been described and presented by MAG are two circles that almost entirely overlap with the exception of something like commuter rail. But either scenario includes essentially all types of transportation programs. MAG has taken these two philosophical categories, and under each one has created both a half-cent funding scenario and a full-cent funding scenario. So in total, there are 4 scenarios, 2 at a half cent, 2 at a full cent. The most basic way to describe the difference between these two philosophies is to say that new capacity has much more funding for high-capacity transit, such as light rail and freeways, whereas system optimization tends to put more funding towards arterial projects and bus rapid transit. Again, as I stated, it's important to note that where there's emphasis, that doesn't mean exclusivity, that projects are in both scenarios. Lastly, I want to point out that in both scenarios, MAG has attempted to create a regionally balanced plan. And by that, I mean MAG has broken the overall county region into 3 parts: East Valley, Phoenix, and West Valley. And when they wanted to regionally balance, what that means is each of those regions is receiving essentially the same amount of funding, albeit in different types of transportation projects. Unfortunately, as I alluded to at the beginning of this presentation, the mystery is the uncertainty that comes with what transit funding looks like in these scenarios. There's not a tremendous amount of information, but I will cover what we do know later in the presentation. Are there any questions or comments before we move on?
Council? Nope. No.
Okie dokie. So, let's go. Let me make sure I've got my, all right. So let's talk about the draft scenarios that everybody's talking about. The hottest topic in town for sure. First up here is the system optimization half-cent scenario. So under that philosophy of system optimization, this is the half-cent. And highlighted here are the various types of projects that are funded in this draft scenario. You'll see light rail, bus rapid transit, streetcar, freeways, freeway intersection projects. You kind of have pretty much everything covered here. We will eventually focus just on the Northwest Valley, but I do think it's worth taking a brief moment that's looking at the entire region, that we take note of a few things worth highlighting here. And really something that you may already be hearing a lot about, but you certainly will be in the coming weeks, is State Route 30. Here it is illustrated as that dotted blue line in the Southwest Valley, south of Goodyear and Avondale. This project has been a top priority for the Southwest Valley for many, many years. In fact, it was originally included in Prop 400 that was approved by the voters in 2004, but was ultimately deferred during the Great Recession, and the revenue stream for Prop 400 was less than originally planned. The good news, I suppose, about State Route 30 is that it is included in some fashion in every scenario, in both half-cent scenarios and in the full-cent scenarios. The question and the turning point will be to what degree and how much of State Route 30 is included. You'll see in this particular scenario, only what is described as the central portion is funded, and that is the portion between the Loop 202 going out to the Loop 303.
Thomas, would you mind letting us know why State Route 30, what good that would do for, well, I-10?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. That's a great question. So I think a good way to look at these areas is to look at the overall transportation or transit corridor here. And even though we don't live in the Southwest Valley, we've all experienced the extreme delays and backups that occur on I-10. It is quickly becoming one of the most dangerous stretches of freeway in the state. Accidents continue to grow on it, and congestion continues to grow on it. Certainly, as the closer into the valley you get, the worse it gets, but it is bad. Even on the weekends as travel occurs, it is very congested. So planners for a long time, well into the early 2000s, recognized the need for an I-10 reliever. and thus was the birth of State Route 30, a freeway facility intended to provide an alternative way for commuters and visitors to get from the West Valley into downtown Phoenix. This is not a unique concept, and in fact, this was the same concept that was used in the East Valley when they created and expanded the Loop 202, which provided an alternative to US 60. And you just look at the map and you can see that there are multiple avenues from the East Valley into downtown Phoenix, and really it's just I-10 in the West Valley. So State Route 30 is critically important to relieve congestion, improve mobility, and also foster economic development in that corridor. And I'm proud to say Peoria has been a supporter of State Route 30 historically. So looking elsewhere in the region, you'll notice there's a dotted green line if you can make it out. It might be small on your screen, I apologize, but that is additional light rail lines that are going to be built in Phoenix. You'll see dotted red lines in Phoenix and the East Valley. Those are bus rapid transit lines that are coming on there. Last thing I want to point out here is that little blue L in Tempe. That is the Tempe streetcar program, a really novel idea that received some initial federal funding. It's like light rail, but somehow different, and also gets regional funding in the draft scenarios. So I'm going to fast forward here to the other half-cent scenario, and I might toggle back and forth just so you can kind of see some of the differences here. And you'll notice the yellow dots represent freeway interchange improvements. Those are critically needed throughout the valley. You'll see several in the Northwest Valley. Those we'll see what happens when we go to the new capacity half-cent. A lot of them disappeared. You see that? I'll go back and forth. It's just fun for me. Lots of the orange dots, not so many. You'll also see, I'll do this a couple more times before we get headaches. In Phoenix, the bus rapid transit line, the other East Valley bus rapid, the red line, dotted lines, those go away. New capacity, as I said before, tends to favor additional light rail, additional freeway pieces here. So you'll notice the big difference in the West Valley under new capacity is an additional stretch of State Route 30, this one running from the new Loop 202 into the Durango curve. This is an important thing to note because you might recall, as I mentioned, MAG staff has attempted to create regionally balanced programs. And again, because they've divided it between East, West, and Phoenix, any additional major projects in the West Valley have to come from that same pool of funds in the West Valley. So where you see new freeways like the extra piece of 30 here, you'll notice a fewer number of other projects in the West Valley. I'll just show this one more time for giggles here. A few more orange dots and not so many. But an interesting visual nonetheless. So let's keep this train moving here. We've covered new capacity, we're cooking gas. All right, any questions, sorry, before we move on? I just like maps, they're fun.
Yes, Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. So, Thomas, how does, with Proposition 400, there was some jurisdictional equity that was built into it. How would jurisdictional equity apply under the new Prop 400 extension?
That's a great question. And I think in the traditional terms of jurisdictional equity, if we think of, it's most notable in the realm of transit. And when it comes to the regional freeway and arterial projects, it's more just a set dollar amount roughly that they're trying to follow. In the world of transit, they've assigned each jurisdiction in Prop 400 essentially a set amount that they're supposed to stick to with transit funding. What's with what is being proposed here is a departure from those notions of jurisdictional equity. I'll cover it a little bit more in depth when we talk about transit, but what we don't know about transit are what routes will be funded. And that's why on these maps, there aren't any new bus routes listed here besides light rail and bus rapid transit. There aren't any additional fixed routes because that hasn't been determined. In lieu of jurisdictional equity in the new scenarios, what MAG is proposing is a funding formula for new transit routes that will use yet to be determined metrics, perhaps such as traffic volume, ridership in nearby routes, things like that to help identify possible new routes and also use that to determine when and where those routes would be added. So JE, your jurisdictional equity, kind of goes away in the draft scenarios.
So to expand on your comment about using traffic studies to determine where the money is going to be spent, where is that data going to come from as far as, are they going to be using data from during the COVID when traffic has been, minimum, has been significantly down? Or when's that data going to be, where are they going to pull that from?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, that's an excellent question, and one that we don't know the answer to right now, in all candor. I will say that in the managers working group that City Manager Jeff Tyne has been a part of, in the intergov meetings that I've been a part of, these are the types of questions that we have asked quite pointedly to get answers. And MAG has not been able to provide great clarity as of yet. What MAG has said is that towards the end of this month, we can anticipate the release of a draft funding formula for new transit routes. When that comes out, staff will be taking a very close look at that to analyze what our potential benefits and will be from it. But the short answer is we don't know.
Okay, thank you.
It's a good question, though.
Thank you.
All right, let's take a closer look here at the Northwest Valley. One of the things I want to emphasize here is the role that Peoria has played at the regional level as a regional player. So many of the projects that we submitted actually fell outside of our city boundaries, and that is a testament to, I would consider it the vision of our leaders in Peoria, recognizing our role within the region to improve overall mobility and economic development without regard to city borders. Here in the Northwest Valley, there's a lot of really positive things that are happening here. What we've done on this picture is sort of combine both half-cent scenarios to give you an overarching view of what's out there. Some things that I just want to call out on this map. You'll see in South Peoria all the way up to North Peoria, the addition of general purpose lanes on the Loop 101. This is a big deal, and this actually goes all the way down to I-10, these general purpose lanes. You'll notice that in North Peoria, and actually going out to Phoenix, the expansion of the Loop 303 with a full interchange with I-17 is included in all half scenarios. There are additional interchange improvements that are happening throughout the region. It's a positive thing. I'm going to highlight a list of our projects later on, but overall, visually, you can see that there's a lot of good things happening. Midtown, you have 67th Avenue improvements from Cactus up to Pinnacle Peak Road. That's going to be a wonderful complement to the improvements that we're doing right now between Pinnacle Peak and Happy Valley Road. So I'm going to do one of those flash in between two slides here, and we've changed colors on the roads, but that's not the point I want to make here in terms of spotting the differences. But we're going to go from half-cent scenarios to the combined full-cent scenarios, and we're going to try and see if we can spot a lot of differences. So here we are at a full cent. Again, colors have changed for the roads, but if it's highlighted, it's included. So we see couple of changes that stick out to me, really. There's not, the biggest one between a half cent and a full cent is you'll notice the Loop 303 has some HOV improvements from Lake Pleasant Parkway down to I-10. That's generally it, candidly, on the difference between the half cent and the full cent. Now, in a half cent, $15 billion, we get quite a few projects. And with an extension or an increase going up to a full cent, we would have an additional $15 billion. We don't have a lot to show for it right now. Why is that? Well, that is because primarily in the draft scenarios, MAG has put most of that additional funding, that additional half cent, towards fixed bus route and transit services. Since we don't know what the funding formula is for new transit and we don't know which routes would be funded, we can't quantify or qualify or put into a map what the actual tangible benefit will be for the Northwest region or the region as a whole. What we can say is that that additional half-cent, primarily but not entirely, will go towards mass transit. So let's talk about what's going on beyond the maps. Here we want to highlight a few policy changes that have been happening and that we've noticed as staff as we've poured through all the MAG documentation. There's three key changes that we wanted to call out to your attention here, and they really highlight some of the policy trade-offs that will be made as we move forward. First and foremost, one of the biggest changes you'll see is the movement away from what we would call funding buckets in the existing Prop 400 towards a more flexible system that doesn't use buckets or firewalls. There's pros and cons to this, and a little bit of backstory as well. But with Prop 400, the legislature passed enabling legislation before the county could go to the voters for a tax increase or extension. In that enabling legislation, the state legislature required that of the half-cent sales tax collected, that it be distributed between freeway, transit, and arterial buckets as in the percentages that are described on the screen. The benefit to having buckets is certainty. You have certainty that each of those modes will have a dedicated revenue source. Then you can roughly quantify it and start to plan a little into the future. The downside to buckets is that it creates these de facto firewalls where it's not possible to move funding from one bucket into another without changing state law. As regional committee leaders, that is not always the best policy if you want flexibility. In the draft scenarios, we see that there's really no funding buckets that are prescribed. Their hope and intent is to get enabling legislation that does not specify how the funds have to be used, but to leave that determination up to the regional councils at MAG. The upside to that is greater flexibility. The downside is a little less certainty that projects will keep being funded, candidly. The other highlight here quickly that I want to cover is obviously the draft scenarios contemplate a tax increase going from a half-cent up to a full cent. This is obviously a very big deal that has a lot of ramifications. Setting aside the political obstacles that such a change might face at the legislature and possibly with the voters, this represents a big shift in policy in terms of how we're going to fund the region's transportation needs. The last thing I want to call out here, and it's just worth noting, the impact to Peoria is maybe more indirect, but it's just worth noting here. And this is the transition of allowing light rail maintenance to be funded by the region. In Prop 400, again, we mentioned that was the first time in Prop 400 that the transit could be funded and included light rail. But light rail costs were only funded by the region if they were the capital costs. So the actual building the train tracks, acquiring the rail cars, et cetera. The ongoing maintenance and operations were assumed to be borne by those jurisdictions that had rail operating in their boundaries. The proposed draft scenarios, in every scenario, contemplate having light rail maintenance, not operations, covered by the region to the tune of about $1.1 billion. Why is this? Well, officially the reasoning from MAG is that federal law requires that if you use federal funding to obtain capital like rail, that you need to maintain that capital. It's unclear though from our staff's reading of the federal law who has to bear that burden and how much they have to set aside for the maintenance. But that said, it is a big policy shift, and I think it's worth recognizing that those rail cities that currently pay for that maintenance will have that burden relieved by the region picking up the tab.
Excuse me, Thomas?
Yep.
How many cities have light rail?
So Mayor, there is Phoenix, Tempe, Mesa. I think, I'm going to ask a phone a friend, I think that's the three. Yeah, I think kind of touching on some borders and
Chandler? So 3.
Correct.
3 cities have light rail, and in the past, they have handled the maintenance in their own cities.
Correct, Mayor.
So this shift will put $1.1 billion onto the entire rest of the valley, all of the cities to share in that maintenance cost for those 3 cities.
Yes, Mayor.
I just wanted to get that clarified. Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Binsbacher?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question. So when there's a shift like this is a significant shift, and definitely not, I guess, considering jurisdictional equity, definitely. How is this approved? Who has the final authority for making a shift like this?
Great question, Mayor, Council Member. Ultimately, this decision of what scenario we move forward with as a region will be decided at multiple layers. The first policymakers that will have a bite at the apple will be the Transportation Policy Committee, of which you sit on.
Mm-hmm.
I believe Regional Council will have a moment to chime in on it. I would be surprised if the Valley Metro Regional Transportation Authority Board that Vice Mayor chairs didn't have a say at it. You'd get regional consensus on a scenario, funding scenario moving forward. Beyond that, you would need legislative permission to go to the ballot. And so the legislature would need to weigh in on that and give their blessing. Ostensibly, they may or may not amend it, but they have the ability to do that. The governor would need to sign the legislation to put it into law. And then the Board of Supervisors may have some flexibility, depending on how the enabling legislation is written, to also have some discretion on whether or not they send it to the ballot. And then ultimately the voters will decide if this is how they want to move forward.
And just one follow-up. So this maintenance $1.1 billion estimate, this is included in all of the draft scenarios?
Mayor, council member, that's correct.
Okay. I know that this conversation has come up in TPC and there's been different opinions expressed on this, but I just don't recall ever landing on, yes, we're going to go this direction. This is significant.
Correct.
And then to your point, a point that was made earlier about Peoria's projects, we have absolutely looked at the bigger picture when it comes to different projects and how, in line with the key, the top priorities on this regional transportation plan, mobility and safety, and how to bring people about from city to city. And I feel like we've been a great neighbor in those discussions, and those relationships are really important. But I think we have to definitely be focused and mindful of representing our citizens, the citizens that we serve. And we are looking at the scenarios at a half cent and how that impacts Peoria, which are projects that impact, I guess, a greater good. And then the additional 1 cent and how that affects Peoria with no, what was the term? No certainty and no buckets. But we would be going to the taxpayers for an increase, an additional half cent above and beyond. So we would have to support that. I just point that out because to be able to go to our taxpayers, our citizens that are relying on us to make the best possible decisions for them and ask for this tax increase, we have to be able to justify why this is meaningful to them, to their quality of life and the big picture. And I'm not there. So I just want to point that, especially without buckets, without certainty, and just having it so, counting on legislation or anything that's going to create some scenario where this flexibility can be managed in the future. I just don't see that happening, especially with when we're asking for a tax increase and the magnitude of the dollars we're talking about. Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. So Thomas, I have a question. Talked about a lot about, passing this. What happens if this doesn't pass with the voters?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, great question. So if right now this is on track to go to the voters in November of 2022, and that's assuming the region has consensus, the legislature gives its permission, the governor signs off on it, and the board of supervisors is all on board. If we meet all of those targets, we'll be on the ballot in November 2022. So what happens if it doesn't pass? The current Prop 400 is set to expire at the end of 2025. So there is sort of a built-in extra couple years, if another bite at the apple, if you will, if this fails in 2022 or is held up along the way, anywhere in between. Ultimately, the region would have until the general election of November of 24 to get this passed. If it did not pass at the November 2024 ballot, then Prop 400 would continue on its glide path towards terminating at the end of 2025. And then there's a whole slew of consequences and dominoes that would fall after that. And the key difference that we would see, and I'll try not to go too far down this path, but the key difference we would see are regionally funded ongoing costs, like 83rd Avenue bus service that the Mayor and Council have done a great job getting slated to get onto the regional support. Prop 400 expires, that regional support would go away. This is one of the things that we alluded to and why we've always been cautious historically about assigning ongoing costs to revenue streams with a set end date, because you could have these sort of collision courses. We can do more analysis beyond that. For the region, you would see a much larger impact on a much larger scale because there's a lot more operational costs associated with Prop 400 that would need to find additional revenue sources. It would be an interesting case study for sure.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you.
I'll try to give it a little more gas here and keep us going. Onto the good stuff here, and I'll kind of breeze through these a little bit. What I wanted to convey here are some of the highlights of the top priority projects that Peoria submitted in sort of list form. These are the freeway projects that we submitted for consideration in the extension. You'll notice that most of these, almost all of them, are included right now in both of the half-cent scenarios, and some in just one. I also want to call out an issue that definitely pops up more with arterials than it does with freeways. You'll notice here Loop 101 and 75th Avenue, we were able, and this is a collaborative effort with Glendale, but our technical experts, specifically Adina and her team, were able to work the MAG process with the support of Mayor and Council to get that project expedited. So it's actually included in Prop 400 and not the extension. This is an important note that I'll just make on the arterial side too. Historically in Prop 400, what is listed in the ultimate scenario, let's suppose we might have a project that falls below the funding level. That doesn't mean it's always going to be out. Our staff, going back to the days of a Young and Andy Granger and Adina on her team, they've been aggressive in working to find opportunities at the regional level when we could pounce and get our projects funded. When other communities had to defer projects in times of hardship, we were always at the ready, prepared, and had projects get bumped up. This is something that we just do really well, and this is a good example of that. But again, freeways, we're doing pretty well in terms of our top priorities. I also like to highlight here, so many of these are actually outside of Peoria's boundaries, but again, strong regional player, strong regional leadership here. Arterials, you can kind of see the same thing. We do almost as well as freeways in terms of our top priorities being included here. Again, we advocate to get these projects in as best we can. Anything that falls below, we're also very aggressive in looking for alternative funding sources. And a great example of this would be the work that we're currently doing at the state legislature to try and get some funding for 67th Avenue improvements to address those critical flooding issues that we're having between Pinnacle Peak and Happy Valley Road. Knock on wood, that's still up for consideration and making decent progress. So just because something may not be included in the final draft scenario here doesn't mean it's out. If it's important to us, we will find a way to get it done. So the bad news on all this, there's always bad news, right? And that's transit funding, and I kind of alluded to it. We just don't know a lot in here. So I want to highlight just a few things that we do know. One of the priorities that we cared about was making sure that bus routes that were regionally funded in Prop 400 stay regionally funded in the extension. This is important, particularly as I mentioned with 83rd Avenue bus service set to come online with regional support next year. We want to make sure that that stays regionally funded for the life of the extension for another 20 years at least. We also know, unfortunately, that at least initially, the fixed route connectors or circulators that we've used and found to be very effective are currently not eligible for regional funding in the draft scenarios. This is unfortunate because connectors and circulators are a low-cost way to sort of expand the reach of the supergrid. We're able to get into underserved communities at lower cost and be flexible with changing routes as needed and help improve connectivity to regions that may not have government, particularly if we were to look into the future like Sun City and other areas that just need support. Connectors, circulators are a way to make those connections through multiple jurisdictions that improve mobility for everyone. We're going to keep fighting to get those included. Another thing that's worth noting is ADA costs are now going to be regionally supported. ADA costs are generally known as those federally required services like paratransit that cities have to provide that are adjacent to fixed bus route services or even circulator services. These costs have been primarily covered with local dollars in the West Valley, and Peoria is certainly that case. So getting regional support for ADA is a big win for us as well. That will alleviate some of the burden. We've also seen over the last few years the demand for these services has increased greatly, and that has also resulted in increased costs. So this is a positive thing. And I've made mention to the fact that while we don't know what the formula will be, we do know that new bus routes will be added based on a formula of some type. So let's give us some more. All right, let's tie this all together and start heading home here. The key observations that we have as staff that we want to call out here. Generally speaking, Peoria projects tend to fare a little bit better in system optimization scenarios. And again, that's because system optimization tends to favor arterial improvements and freeway intersection project improvements. As I mentioned before, we highly anticipate adjustments being made to these draft scenarios. These are drafts. This isn't the final product, and so we anticipate some additional changes being made along the way in the development of a preferred scenario. We also just noticed as staff, we were pretty impressed, candidly, that MAG was able to fit so many projects of a variety of types within a half-cent scenario. Maybe I've just spent too much time in government, but I was surprised at how far $15 billion would go, and I think that's worth noting. Overall, with the arterial and freeway programs here, I think we do pretty well in terms of getting our priorities funded in a half-cent scenario. Even our neighboring communities are doing pretty well as also. The key piece, again, with the freeway program is what is going to happen with State Route 30? How, as a region, are we going to come together in unity with a scenario that has everybody on board? And State Route 30, initially at least, is one of the biggest issues that's going to have to be ironed out. And I'm not entirely sure how that could happen. I've got my own, armchair quarterback ideas, but it's just an unsettled item right now and something that we're going to work on. I do think one of my favorite historians, a guy named Shelby Foote, I was a history major, he spoke about the genius of America is our ability to compromise. And I think with this issue and State Route 30 and hopefully and probably even light rail maintenance and other big pieces, we're going to find a way forward. This transportation sales tax, if it's the will of us to move forward with this, if it's important to us, we'll find a way. But State Route 30 is one of the most interesting pieces of this conversation. And then observations on transit, I've covered these at length, but we just don't know a lot. We're going to work to find more information moving forward.
Thomas, on that?
Yep.
Just a quick observation on transit, I think, because a lot of questions specifically on that. The reality is, here in the Phoenix metro area, funding for our transit program is very complex arrangements that are going on. You have a number of cities that committed additional revenue sources, oftentimes in the form of sales tax, like Peoria, to provide an enhanced service. And some of that is right in the middle of our regional grid system. And so you have an enhanced service. So there's some ancillary benefit. The question gets to what is that appropriate level and how much is maintenance and how much is replacement and what is appropriate for the region to pick up. And so I just want to make sure that we're all aware there's no right or wrong in all of these. It just requires some thoughtful discussion and compromise, I think, as Thomas had referred to. So more to come on that piece, but I want to make sure that we don't look like this is just a quick, easy answer here. Thank you for that.
Right. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that. So now what? We'll just open it up here. We've had a lot of good conversation. I've highlighted here some of the staff changes that we're going to be pursuing, but I'd really like to focus at this point. If there are any additional council comments or suggestions, are we headed in the right direction? Any thoughts on half cent versus full cent, buckets versus flexibility, those types of things? Any comments or thoughts on that?
I have a lot of comments and a lot of thoughts. First of all, from half cent, which is not a tax increase at all. It is, it conforms to what everybody has been obligated to pay all along, all of our residents. Add another half cent onto that, and we could be risking everything. And as we saw, the benefits of half cent added on to it are not substantial enough for us to take that risk, in my opinion. Second, I would like to talk about if we could possibly broach the subject of what is really considered regional. Light rail is a very, very expensive item. And, at the beginning of Prop 400, there was a vision for that to be very regional. As the reality has progressed, it really has become a transit item for just a few cities. So it is not regional. It's not going to come to Peoria or anywhere in the West Valley for the next 20 or 25 years at the earliest. So it's, it's a sub-region. And so now to not only say that we're going to commit to continuing to pay for light rail, but now we're going to add $1.1 billion in there for maintenance, which was originally covered by the cities that have light rail. That's thinking a little bit outside of the box, a little bit too far outside of the box for me. So those items are a really big deal, and if you want to add in what really is regional, I would say that I-10 is a huge regional transit corridor, interstate. So, you've got trucks and cars and everybody backed up on I-10 going and coming 7 days a week, and we're only going to relieve a portion of it. And hopefully we are going to at least relieve that one portion of it, but we really need to consider that second portion as time goes on, or at least some part of relieving that traffic in the interim in this next 20 years. So that needs to somehow find some way to make its way into this program. I just have those things to say.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Binsbacher?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with everything the mayor said. Also, I just want to emphasize the jurisdictional equity, which again expands on what she said. I think that's really important. And when we, the original Prop 400, the voters voted on what that was going to be. And over time, people change, leadership change. And having those things defined, it's so important for us to continue to honor what those voters voted for. Mm-hmm. So moving ahead without certainty, without clear definition of what we're spending these dollars on, I'm not comfortable with that. And then to just break it down to a little more detail, how it's determined that I guess a streetcar qualifies, but the circulator doesn't. I want a better understanding of how that's being viewed, who's making that determination, at what point do we weigh in on that? Great presentation. Thank you, Thomas.
So I would like to say that Peoria is very well represented in all of these agreements and negotiations and conversations that are happening, and yet we still have so many questions that obviously a lot of information is coming at us instead of being disseminated from us. So our city manager serves on the management committee. Vice Mayor is the chair of Valley Metro. Councilmember Binsbacher is on TPC, and I sit on MAG's Regional Council, and yet we are still sort of stuck in time with moving some of these large bullet points to places that we find more palatable. It's quite frustrating. And I know that we have made a lot of progress. Let's just say that a lot of time has gone by. But I do believe that more progress can happen and should happen before it ends up at our legislature and they choose not to put it on the ballot, or they start making changes that are not good for any of us. We need to come to some kind of a consensus before it ends up there and we put it all in their hands.
That's a great point, Mayor. All right, let's wrap this up. This is, again, a repeat of that progress report of our greatest hits to date. We've reviewed the draft scenarios today. Congratulations, everybody is awake and we're here. So now what's happening at MAG is they are moving into a public engagement piece called Pick Your Path. I'm going to show some dates here in just a second, but they're trying to get public feedback on some of the concepts that are being proposed with the draft scenarios here. MAG's goal ultimately is to identify, and this may be an aggressive goal, to identify a preferred scenario later this summer and by the fall. If they can do that and develop regional consensus, then they will seek legislative approval at the 2022 legislative session. Assuming they're successful there, the Board of Supervisors will follow, and then ultimately the Maricopa County voters in November of 22 will have the final say on an extension. So that's where we're headed. Here's just a couple of dates on the Pick Your Path public engagement process that's happening. I'd also just like to thank, as we always do, they never get enough praise, the Office of Communications, who's been helpful in getting this out and maximizing our participation in these events. So with that, I want to thank you for your time in considering this important topic. Aside from the edge of your seat excitement that is Prop 400, your insight has been very helpful to us and will make an impact for the region for years to come. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any more questions. Thank you, Mayor.
Anyone? Okay. No more questions, and thank you very much for putting this all forward in such an interesting way. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Tyne.
Yep, Mayor and Council, that is the only study session item we have. We know the regular meeting is coming up. I wanted to thank our internal team who has just been outstanding as a resource to all of the leadership and certainly for our Intergovernmental Affairs Director too. So Adina Lund, of course, Kevin Burke, Kathy Colbath, our transit manager, Eric Strunk, Emily Webb, Penny Perella, all have done just wonderful work on this. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we are adjourned until our 6 p.m. regular meeting.
The Mayor and City Council welcome you to the Peoria City Council meeting. As a courtesy to others, please silence all phones. If you would like to address an issue that is on the agenda, or if you would like to speak to the council regarding a non-agenda item, please complete a speaker request form, which can be found in the front lobby of the Peoria City Council chambers or in the tray to the left of the speaker's podium. Please place the completed speaker request form in the second tray to the left of the speaker's podium labeled Request to Speak. All speakers will have 3 minutes to complete their comments. A countdown clock is easily visible on the left side of the wall behind the City Council dais. Only items listed on the agenda may be addressed by the Council. Since items presented as part of a speaker's request have not been listed on the agenda, and due to the requirements of open meeting laws, the Council will be unable to respond to items presented as part of the speaker's request. However, please be aware that your comments will be noted. The speaker's name will be called to speak at the appropriate time, in the order that the forms were received. Thank you for your interest and participation in the Peoria City Council meeting.
Peoria City Council meeting will now come to order. Please rise for a moment of quiet reflection and the Pledge of Allegiance led by Vice Mayor Edwards.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The clerk will please call the roll.
Chairperson Carlett,
Here.
Vice Chair Edwards,
Here.
Board Member Heath,
Here.
Board Member Finn,
Here.
Board Member Binsbacher,
Here.
Board Member Patena,
Here.
Board Member Hunt,
Here.
Board Member Dunn,
Here.
and Board Member Johnson.
Here.
Good evening and welcome to the Peoria City Council meeting of May 18th, 2021. We will begin this evening with a series of Community Facility District Board meetings. Per Arizona state law, our board consists of the City Council as well as 2 additional board members. We have Jerry Johnson on this side and Mike Heath on this side, who will be joining us at the dais for specific CFD board meetings. So we appreciate both of you for being here. Thank you for volunteering. And we will start with the Mystic at Lake Pleasant Heights Community Facilities District Board meeting. First item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Board members, are there any items to be removed from consent? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Board, please vote. And it passes unanimously. Thank you. We will now move on to new business for the Mystic CFD. 5R, this is a public hearing, district budget and tax levy for fiscal year 2022. Mr. Tyne?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. And Sonia Andrews, who serves as District Chief Financial Officer, will provide a brief presentation.
Good evening, Chairman Carlett and members of the board. This is a continuation of the budget process for the Mystic at Lake Pleasant Heights CFD. The tentative budget and tax levy was adopted back in May 4th, and tonight is the public hearing and adoption of the final budget and tax levy. The budget for the Mystic CFD totals $437,500, and the tax rate is $265. And with that, I can answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? All right, seeing none. This is a public hearing. I declare this public hearing open. Is there any members of the public who would like to address this issue? I have received no speaker request forms. And seeing no speakers, I will close this public hearing. Council, is there any discussion? Is there a motion on item 5R?
Move to approve.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Please vote. And it passes unanimously. We will now move on to item 6R. which is authorized sale and issuance of District General Obligation Bond Series 2021 and levy of ad valorem property tax with respect to the bonds. Mr. Tyne?
Thank you. And Ms. Sanders can provide a presentation on this action item.
Thank you.
So the Mystic CFD was created in 2020, last year, and as with all new CFDs, we do an initial small bond issuance to establish the tax rate on the tax bill. So that's the only purpose of this small issuance. It's a very simple issuance. Will be limited to $150,000. The developer will actually purchase this investment. So this is the resolution authorizing that initial issuance and the levy of the 265 so that we can establish the tax rate on the tax bill.
Did you say 265?
Correct, 265.
Thank you. All right. Council, are there any questions? Seeing none, is there a motion on item 6R?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. And it passes unanimously. We will now transition to the Vistancia North Community Facilities District Board meeting. And the first item is the consent agenda. Board members, are there any items to be removed from consent? Seeing none, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Say aye. Or just vote. Passes unanimously. Thank you. The next item is a public hearing. This is the district budget and tax levy for fiscal year 2022. Mr. Tyne.
Thank you. And Ms. Sanders will serve as the district chair or district finance officer for this as well. And it is an action item with a public hearing.
Thank you.
So Chairman Carlett and members of the board, this is also the continuation of the budget process for the Vistancia North CFD. The original proposed budget and tax levy was adopted on May 4th, and tonight is the public hearing and final budget and tax levy adoption. The Vistancia North budget is for $354,500, and their tax rate is 55 cents because the existing Vistancia is at 210 right now, so the combined is 265.
Thank you. Are there any questions? All right, this is a public hearing, and I declare this public hearing open. Is there any members of the public who would like to address this? And I have received no speaker request forms, so I will close the public hearing. Council, is there any discussion? Board members, is there any discussion? All right, is there a motion on item 8R?
I move to approve. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Please vote. And that passes unanimously. All right, item 9R is authorized sale and issuance of District General Obligation Bonds, Series 2021, and levy of ad valorem property tax with respect to the bonds. Mr. Tyne.
All right, it's an action item as well, and Ms. Sanders will speak to it. Thank you.
Thank you. This is also the initial issuance for establishing the tax rate on the tax bill for the Vistancia North CFD, which was formed last year as well. And this issuance will be limited to $50,000, and the tax rate will be 55 cents.
Thank you. Are there any questions or discussion, board? All right, seeing none, is there a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. And at this time, board members Johnson and Heath will be changing seats. Clerk, please note the change in our dais, the departure of our two CFD board members, and the arrival of our two council youth liaisons, Dom Van Winkle and Sanvi Tuwarni. We will now move to the Vistancia Community Facilities District Board meeting. First item is the consent agenda. Board members, are there any items to be removed from consent? Seeing none, is there a motion? Motion is second. Please vote. And the consent agenda passes unanimously. All right, we will now move to new business for Vistancia Community Facilities District. This is a public hearing, district budget and tax levy for fiscal year 2022. Mr. Tyne?
Thank you. And just one item for this Community Facilities District, and does have a public hearing and action item, and I'll pass it to Ms. Andrews.
Thank you.
I know I sound like a broken record, but each of these CFDs are separate entities, and so we have to have these separated and presented separately as well. So this is the continuation of the Vistancia CFD budget process. Again, on May 4th, the tentative budget and tax levy were adopted, and tonight is the public hearing and final budget and tax levy adoption. The Vistancia budget totals $4,692,500, and the tax levy for Vistancia remains unchanged at $210.
Thank you. Council, is there any questions or discussion? All right, this is a public hearing. Is there any members of the public who wish to address this item? And I have received no speaker request forms. So I will close this public hearing. Council, any other questions? Board, any other questions? All right, do I have a motion on item 11R?
So moved.
Second. Motion and a second, please vote. And it passes unanimously. We will now move on to the Vistancia West Community Facilities District Board meeting. First item is the consent agenda. Board members, are there any items to be removed from consent? Seeing none, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second, please vote. Consent agenda passes unanimously. We'll now move on to new business for the Vistancia West Community Facilities District meeting. This is a public hearing. District budget and tax levy for fiscal year 2022. Mr. Tyne.
Thank you, Mayor. And this is the last of our CFD items. It is indeed, as you had mentioned, a public hearing as well as one action item. And thank you, Ms. Andrews.
Again, a continuation of the budget process for Vistancia West. The tentative budget and tax levy for the Vistancia West was also adopted on May 4th, and tonight is the public hearing and final budget and tax levy adoption. The Vistancia West CFD budget totals $937,500, and their tax rate also remains unchanged at $210.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. Are there any members of the public who would like to address this item? Have we received any speaker request forms? No, seeing none. I will close the public hearing. Council, is there any board? Is there any discussion? Do I have a motion?
Second.
Please vote. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. All right. We will now begin with the first of three presentations. The first is our Youth Council Liaison Service Awards. Thank you for joining us. Every year, the Peoria City Council provides Peoria youth with the opportunity to serve as non-voting members at City Council meetings. Known as the Youth Council Liaison Program, it is designed to provide Peoria youth a positive civic experience on the art of governance and an opportunity to share different perspectives. This year, Sanvi Tuarni and Dominique Van Winkle served as the two Youth Council liaisons and were sworn in on August 18th, 2020. Over the past 9 months, Ms. Tawarny and Mr. Van Winkle have actively participated in City Council meetings, attended numerous community events, and have shared a youth perspective on issues of the day. In addition, this year's Youth Council Liaisons annual project developed Youth Advisory Board promotional materials and resources to bring awareness to the board and their goals. As the 2021 school year is coming to an end, we would like to recognize Ms. Tawarny and Mr. Van Winkle for their dedication and leadership to the residents of Peoria as our Youth Council Liaisons. Please accept these service awards as a small token of our appreciation, and they are going to be presented to you. Can they come down to the front? Would you please go down to the front and accept your awards? Mr. Brian Carrico will be presenting them to both of you. I cannot believe how fast this year went, and you are the Youth Council Liaisons who served during the pandemic. That is historic, and hopefully will never happen again. But you have certainly made Peoria proud. Thank you both for everything that you have done and all of your involvement all year long. We appreciate your service. All right, we will now move on to our next presentation, and it is National Public Works Week. Public Works is critically important to our health and safety, and their theme this year is Stronger Together. I will now read a proclamation in recognition. Whereas public works infrastructure, facilities, and services are of vital importance to sustainable communities and to the health, safety, and well-being of the people of the city of Peoria, Arizona. And whereas throughout the global coronavirus pandemic, public works services such as water, sewer, engineering, project management, recycling, bulk trash, right-of-way maintenance, street, fleet, and facility repairs all proceeded uninterrupted throughout the crisis, delivering essential services to the Peoria community that maintained a sense of normalcy. And whereas certain public works personnel dealt directly with higher risk situations, such as transporting bus and paratransit passengers to jobs, medical appointments, and grocery stores, wastewater personnel dealing with infected sewage, custodians cleaning high exposure areas or rooms, or engineers managing critical construction projects with large workforces. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in the United States of America to gain knowledge of and to maintain an interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas this year's theme, Stronger Together, reflects the collaboration we have all endeavored upon during this extraordinary time and signifies the contributions that public works employees and services provided in support of our everyday quality of life. And whereas the year 2021 marks the 61st annual National Public Works Week sponsored by the American Public Works Association. Now, therefore, I, Kathy Carlett, Mayor of the City of Peoria in the state of Arizona, do hereby designate the week of May 16th through 22nd, 2021 as National Public Works Week. Thank you so much, everyone in Public Works, for making our city continue to run without interruption during a pandemic that has just been historic. We cannot thank you enough for everything that you've done. And if you would please come down and receive your proclamations at the dais. Okay. And we have with us Public Works Director Kevin Burke, Water Services Director Kate Powers, and Engineering Director Adina Lund. And before you speak, Councilmember Hunt would like to say something.
Those two guys back in the corner come down also. I think they represent, shall I call it the dirty work out there? I'm not sure. Wow, you know, having worked in this city now for quite a number of years, 32, not quite. Okay, I was talking about myself, actually, I haven't been here for 2 years, but I know how integral every department is to another. I mean, there's not one department that we could just say, we'll get rid of them and we won't even miss them. But I do think that of all the departments, that if they were to go away, our citizens would go crazy. I mean, just think about how many lives they touch on a minute-by-minute basis. I went back there a while ago and said jokingly, I know you guys are still alive because my garbage gets picked up every Friday morning. Well, isn't that something that every citizen expects? They may even be able to tell you the time that their truck comes. And if the route gets changed to the time, we probably get calls that said, what happened? You didn't get my garbage. I mean, they are so important. And the paper there, proclamation, really specified so many of the jobs that are covered, from the engineering and the approvals and all, right down to picking up garbage. And I mean, it's just amazing. You guys are all amazing, and you represent such a wide display of talents and interests. And I know when we could have park fests before this virus, they were the most popular with their big trucks out there. That's what everybody likes to see, is the big trucks. So anyway, congratulations to the leaders and the guys that work with you, and just thank you every day for all that you do.
Thank you so much, Mayor and Council. Really appreciate the recognition. And as you so eloquently said, the three of us have the honor of receiving the recognition, but we're just representatives for the men and women that do those essential duties you spoke of on a daily basis. And also just want to note how well the three departments of engineering, public works, and water services collaborate to do what's termed public works for all of us. So thank you so much for the recognition.
Thank you. Thank you all very, very much. Our final presentation this evening is a recognition of May as Brain Tumor Awareness Month. And as you can see, the council is all wearing gray in support of this very important proclamation, which I am about to read. Whereas an estimated 700,000 Americans are currently living with a primary brain tumor, and approximately 85,000 will be diagnosed in 2021. And whereas brain tumors are among the deadliest forms of cancer, with just a 36% 5-year relative survival rate following diagnosis. And whereas for the most common form of primary malignant tumors, glioblastoma, the 5-year relative survival rate is only 7.2%, and a median survival is only 8 months. And whereas Arizona is home to the largest brain tumor center in the world, the Ivy Brain Tumor Center at Barrow Neurological Institute, which is focused entirely on discovering new treatments that will increase life expectancy and contribute to a cure for malignant brain tumors. And whereas increased public awareness of brain tumors through advocacy and support for targeted research, as well as education about the impact brain tumors have on patients and their families' lives, are critical for support and action for a cure. Now, therefore, I, Kathy Carlett, Mayor of the City of Peoria and the State of Arizona, do hereby designate May 2021 as Brain Tumor Awareness Month. Along these lines, I wanted everyone to be able to put a face to Brain Tumor Awareness Month. The photos you see here do just that. They put a real face on this. These are pictures of a boy named Cade. He was a healthy 9-year-old boy. He weighed 75 pounds, was active, athletic, smart, and a loving big brother. And then one day, everything changed. It was a brain tumor, and it was cancerous. Pediatric brain tumors are the leading cause of cancer-related deaths among children and young adults ages 19 and younger, surpassing leukemia. Unfortunately, I don't have the statistics around the trauma endured in the battle to fight this horrible disease. Cade's journey through the harsh realities of radiation and chemo treatments are taking a cruel toll on his body, which is now a weak 60 pounds. I also don't have the statistics on the anguish and heartache of his family as they watch his pain and wish they could take it from him. Cade is a fighter, but he needs help. Research has been prioritized for adults over pediatric brain tumors, and much more needs to be done to develop better, safer treatments for kids. I've posted information on my mayor's Facebook page for anyone who would like to learn more about a few of the organizations that are working to help fight this devastating disease. And Cade, we wish you the very best. Thank you. We will now move on to the consent agenda. All items listed on the consent agenda are considered to be routine or have been previously reviewed by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion unless a council member requests an item to be removed and considered in the normal sequence of today's agenda. Tonight's consent agenda includes items that require a public hearing. If there is any member of the public present who would like to address a public hearing on the consent agenda, please complete a speaker request form. And we have received no speaker request forms at this time. Council, are there any items to be removed from consent? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Councilmember Hunt? Consent agenda passes unanimously. We will now move on to the regular agenda and a series of public meetings. There is 5 public meetings. So I am going to say this just one time. If a member of the public would like to speak, please fill out a speaker request form and place it in the bin next to the podium, and you will be asked to speak at that time when I receive your speaker request form. We will begin with item 27R, public hearing, fiscal years 2022 and 2023 water and wastewater rates. Mr. Tyne.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. And Barry Haug, our Deputy Finance Director, will present and discuss the presentation regarding this public hearing for the rate adjustment for water and wastewater rates.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Thank you, Mr. Tyne. This presentation will actually cover 27R and 28R for the water, wastewater, solid waste rate adoptions. It's been a long road to get here tonight. As you can see from the timeline, we started back in February of 2020. That was really before COVID really hit us. So this was a comprehensive study in which Ben Butler from our budget office, budget coordinator, worked with the hired consultant FCS group to review the utility rate systems. Back on February 16th, Sonia Andrews, our CFO, presented to you at the study session the results of that rate study, including the 5-year forecast of those rates. After that review with council, we began the formal steps required to adopt the new rates as required by state statute. The first is the notice of intent, which council adopted on March 16th. And then we put the rate report on file with the clerk's office and the notice of publications on March 17th. Then at the budget study sessions on March 31st, we actually reviewed with council the utility budgets for FY22. And tonight, this is the final step with the public hearing and adoption of the utility rates. As I mentioned earlier, Sonia went through more detail on the February 16th study session, but I wanted to provide a few slides from that for the general public tonight who might be watching. The rate study was done to ensure that we continue to meet and maintain our 4 main objectives, as you see on the slide. The water, wastewater, and solid waste systems are expected to be cost recovery. So when we set them up as enterprise funds. This means that it kind of works more like a business activity. The fees that we collect in this system are only used in that system and not in any other operations of the city. They're all retained in their respective enterprise funds for the operating and the capital needs of that system. And vice versa, we do not take any other city revenues and use them to fund the enterprise. The other objectives are revenue stability, or equity and conservation, and we want to make sure that the rates are affordable for our citizens. The results of this study show that in order for us to continue meeting and maintaining these objectives, we have to continue our rate adjustments for the next few years. And the primary reason is because of the cost drivers in our utility systems. So let's go over a few of those. On the operating side of our water and wastewater systems, some of the major cost drivers is water and water delivery, electricity, chemicals, and personnel costs. On the capital side, we have our plant expansions, and that's at Jomax, Beardsley, and our Pyramid Peak plants and facilities. In the sustainability and conservation, we have the Reclaimed Water Program. And of course, we need to continue to maintain our aging infrastructure. For our solid waste operations, landfill costs continue to increase. Our recycling costs went from a revenue generator to an expense. And our fleet costs for our continued operation and replacement of our vehicles. So this slide will show you the combined bill impact of the proposed rate increases for the average residential utility bill. The average residential user for the city has a 3/4 inch meter and uses about 10,000 gallons per month. Based on the study, we are projecting that we'll need about a 2.76 increase over the next 2 years. And we're proposing that those increases would begin on January of each fiscal year. And lastly, as we compare it with our neighbors, we are still one of the most affordable in the Phoenix metro area. You can see us third from the bottom there. And with the proposed rate increase, we would expect to maintain that position. And that's the end of the presentation. These items do, as we mentioned earlier, require a public hearing before they can be adopted. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you. Council, are there any questions? All right. So just to, Councilmember Dunn?
So on the utility costs, I definitely agree, you know, we are one of the lowest rates, you know, and I've seen that and said that in the trash and recycling for a long time. The one thing that I did want to let people know, I did talk to several of my constituents, and they're having a real hard time after, you know, the pandemic, COVID. Inflation is going up at a record pace, and I do know that our water and our trash and recycling are essential services, and our workers are, you know, top notch. They really are. But I did want to let everybody know that I am going to be voting against this tonight on both of them, and this is why. It's not that I'm not open to revisit this at a later date, but I think right now it's just the people that I've heard through from in my district, it's been a real hardship. And so that is why I'm going to be voting no on both of these today. So thank you.
Mr. Tyne, do we continue to have the utility and mortgage grant funds offered to our residents?
Mayor and Council, that is correct. As a result of our Peoria Cares program and then subsequent to that, the ARP funding, we anticipate to continue on with our utility assistance program. So should there be any residents in Peoria that are experiencing hardship, we do encourage them to reach out to our finance department to gain any assistance, and we will absolutely be showing plenty of levity in those areas.
Thank you. Councilmember Binsbacher?
Thank you, Mayor. And I appreciate that those support systems are still in place for people having hardship, even beyond the pandemic. I think that's really important and something I'm really proud of that we've done over the years as a city. I wanted to just kind of emphasize a couple things that you talked about. Number one is the enterprise fund. That's not something that's common and that every city does, but the fact that we collect these fees from our citizens to provide this service, the funds stay there to provide the service and the infrastructure for our citizens. I think that's really important. And also with regard to recycling, I know a lot of citizens in my district are really concerned because they're aware that the cost for recycling is going up and just wanting to make sure that we're going to maintain recycling and our commitment to being a sustainable city. And I feel like we're doing the best we can in these circumstances to continue to offer that service. Unfortunately, so many things, the costs have gone up. And so, you know, unfortunately, we pass that along, but I also appreciate that it's done in very small increments over a period of time, giving folks an opportunity to adjust to that. And then, of course, the assistance programs, I think, are fantastic as well. Thank you for that presentation.
So I would also like to ask another question when it comes to water. I know that we are in a, 22-year drought now, something like that. And the cost of buying water from Central Arizona Project and Salt River Project and various leases and so forth has become very, very expensive. So how is that expense represented in what we're doing here this evening?
Mayor and Council, the increased water costs for FY22 is definitely in the budget as proposed. And then in the kind of the rate model that we use, a 5-year forecast, we've included increases for those type of items. So we feel that we've covered those for the hopefully next 5 years.
Good. I appreciate that. It is just getting to be critical. And then the infrastructure that we are putting in to allow us to reuse water and get, you know, 2 uses, if not more, out of every single drop of water will sustain us far into the future, and that is money well spent. So thank you very much for that. Is there any further discussion? All right. This is a public hearing, and I will open the public hearing. Is there any members of the public who would like to address this? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Any further comments from the council? Do I have a motion on item 27R?
Second.
I have a motion and a second on 27R. Please vote. And it passes 6-1. And now we will move on to item 28R, which is fiscal years 2022 and 2023 solid waste rates. And we have already heard the presentation, and so I will open this public hearing. Are there any members of the public present who would like to address this hearing? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Council, are there any further comments or discussion? All right, is there a motion on item 28R?
Second.
Thank you, please vote. And it passes 6-1. All right, thank you very much. We will now move on to item 29R, public hearing, truth in taxation on primary property tax levy fiscal year 2022. Mr. Tyne.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. And there's a series of steps that occur within this specific item. And so to be aware that there is a public hearing as well as a roll call vote. And to provide a presentation, we do have Peter Christensen to provide, I think, presentation on specifically truth in taxation.
Thank you, Mr. Tyne. Good evening, Mayor and Council. The next three items are a continuation of the process to formally adopt the fiscal year 2022 budget, beginning first with truth in taxation. This is a series of public noticing requirements that are triggered when our primary property tax levy is increasing from one year to the next, exclusive of any new construction. Unfortunately, the language that we're required to use does speak of things like tax increases, which is a little misleading, so I want to spend a little time going through that. As you know, Arizona's property tax system is a bifurcated one. We have both a primary and a secondary levy. The primary levy can be used for any general government purpose, and that goes into our general fund. The secondary levy can only be used for paying the debt service on general obligation bonds, and we have a separate fund within our financial system for that. Together, there's a couple of variables that go into calculating what our actual tax levy is, or the amount of revenue that we generate each year. The tax rate, which is something that the council has direct control over, and then the assessed valuation of all properties in the cities, which we are given by the assessor's offices for Maricopa County and Yavapai County. So the only way that the tax levy can go up is if one or the other or both of these variables increases. So I want to talk about that. The first variable is the city's tax rate. This slide just shows that our overall property tax rate of $1.44 per $100 of assessed valuation has been constant since 2009. Was the last time we changed it. That was actually a decrease from the previous year. The other variable, assessed valuation, is one that you can see that moves up and down. During the Great Recession, our assessed valuation dropped a lot over a several-year period. That did require some pretty dramatic changes in our capital program. But since then, since we've been recovering since fiscal year 2013, we have been steadily increasing each year, as you can see, and this is definitely a hot topic in the news today. So basically what happens is anytime we're in an environment like this where assessed values are increasing, these truth in taxation requirements get triggered. For fiscal year 21, our current year, you can see that the tax rate that was set is the $1.44 per $100 of assessed valuation, split between the primary rate of 29 cents and the secondary rate of $1.15. And we are not proposing any changes to the tax rate, the property tax rate for fiscal year 2022. When we apply our rate to our assessed valuation, the levy or the revenue it generates is a total of $25.6 million. That's a $1.8 million increase over fiscal year 21. And really that number in red, the $353,000 on the primary levy, is what is triggering the truth in taxation requirements. So tonight we're asking council to hold a public hearing as required by state statute on the city's intent to increase the primary property tax levy, and also to hold a roll call vote adopting a resolution to do the same. And I can answer any questions.
Thank you. So just to clarify, we are not increasing our property tax levy. Is that correct? It was at $1.44. It is continuing to be at $1.44.
Yeah, the fact that our levy is going up is driven exclusively by increases in valuations in the city.
Thank you. Council, any discussion, questions, comments? Seeing none, I declare this public hearing open. Is there any members of the public who would like to address this issue? Seeing none, close this public hearing, and I will ask for a motion, please, on item 29R.
So moved.
We have a motion, a second, and you require a roll call vote? Would you like to poll the council?
Yeah. Mayor Carlett?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Edwards?
Yes.
Councilmember Finn,
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzwater,
Yes.
Councilmember Patena,
Yes.
Councilmember Hunt,
Yes.
and Councilmember Dunn.
Yes.
Thank you. It passes unanimously. All right. Item 30R is public hearing fiscal year 2022 final budget adoption. Mr. Tyne.
Thank you, and I'll pass it again to Mr. Christensen, our budget manager.
Okay, this next item is consideration of adoption of the final budget for fiscal year 2022. 2 weeks ago on May 4th, Council adopted the tentative budget, which sets the maximum appropriation or expenditure level for the fiscal year. And tonight is really the culminating step in adopting the expenditure side of the budget for fiscal year 2022. Just to give a quick overview of what's in the budget, first of all, this budget is a balanced budget. It's balanced for fiscal year 22, and it's also balanced structurally over the next 5 years, meaning that our ongoing revenues are sufficient to meet our expected ongoing expenditures. This budget provides the resources necessary for our departments to continue to provide the level of service that our residents and our businesses have come to expect. The budget supports the council's priorities as articulated in the livability goals. As we've been talking about, the budget does not include any changes in our rates, our property tax rates, or our sales tax rates. And as Mr. Hag was talking about, it does include modest increases in our utility rates. So I think we can say safely that we are living within our means and that this budget puts us on a continued sound financial footing into the future. So the budget we're proposing totals $695 million. This is a 4.5% increase over fiscal year 2021. It's made up of the 4 major categories you see on the screen, the largest of which is the operating budget at $329 million, or 47%. This funds the ongoing day-to-day operations of the city. The next large component is the first year of the capital program that council adopted 2 weeks ago. This totals $242 million, and this goes toward funding our major investments in infrastructure, facilities, and amenities that the community desires. Then we have our debt service budget of $45 million for fiscal year 22 and our contingency appropriation of $79 million. And with that, we're asking council tonight to hold a public hearing on the proposed final budget for fiscal year 22 before acting on that. I can answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Councilmember Fitzwater?
From before. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Dunn?
So on this as well, I wanted to make a few comments on the regular budget and the CIP. I know the regular budget, one of the things that I've looked at is the money that we're spending on public health and safety and public works, our employees, and the amount that we're spending on executive staff. And I do see a big swing there. And so tonight I will be voting against this as well. I also am looking at the investment, and I know it was told to me earlier that we have in the north a lot of new growth, and in the south not a lot of new growth. But what we're adding is new trailheads, additional $100 million to parks, art, bridges, and I just see too much of a gap between what we're spending in some of these other districts, including mine, the south. And I was hoping I'd never have to say that, but at this point, I will be voting no on this. So I wanted to explain myself. We have over 17% in the CIP for parks, and that just is, that's a lot of money. So again, I am going to be voting no on this. Thank you.
Council, any further questions or discussion? Mr. Tyne, the public hearings, or excuse me, the budget hearings that we have had, normally we see a list of how long, all of the times that we've spent on on work study sessions and the budget leading up to this point. Can you kind of give me a rundown on that?
Yeah, I'll see. I'm not sure if we have it in
I
tonight's
don't have a slide tonight, I'm sorry.
presentation. Probably it's important to mention that the process actually started very early on, probably in November of 2020, I believe, is when we first went through and provided you an overview of the different financial condition that we had and overview of different programs that we had and anticipated in place. From there, at the beginning of the new year, we went through a series of workshop and study sessions to go through each one of the individual operating budgets as well as the capital improvement program. So that included everything. As you know, the city has a number of different funds. So all of the general fund operations, including public safety, as well as parks and recreation, then moving into public works, which included the enterprise funds, discussions on water and wastewater as well, and then followed by that with a presentation by Mr. Christensen on the capital improvement program. From there, after those deliberations, it was quite extensive discussions, actually. All of our study sessions, I believe, pretty much after the new year did include budget discussions at that point. From there, we do have a series of formal steps that have also been included, including the capital improvement program and the tentative budget, which was approved in the last council meeting before we got to this step. So hope that helps you out.
It does. Thank you. We have been briefed very well and had a lot of information up to this point, and now it is time for the final budget. And so this is a public hearing. I declare this public hearing open. Are there any members of the public who would like to address this item? Seeing none, I will close this public hearing. Council, any further discussion? Is there a motion on item 30R?
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. And it passes 6-1. Item 31R is a public hearing, fiscal year 2022 property tax levy. Mr. Tyne.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. And we will have Mr. Christensen who will provide a presentation, as well as we'll have the public hearing, no action item on this item. So I'll pass it to Mr. Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Tyne. Mayor and Council, this last item is back to the property tax. We are required by state statute to hold a public hearing at a council meeting before we actually adopt the levy. So the final adoption of the levy will be on June 1st, as I show here. As stated earlier, we are not proposing any change in the property tax rates for fiscal year 22. They will remain at 29 cents per $100 of assessed valuation for the primary tax rate and $1.15 per $100 of assessed valuation for the secondary rate, for a total of $1.44. This will result in a total levy of $25.6 million, with $5.1 million for the primary levy and $20.4 million for the secondary levy. And again, the increases you're seeing here are being driven by increases in property valuations throughout the city. As mentioned before, our overall tax rate of $1.44 has stayed constant for the last 10 years, and indeed even longer than that. And we're not proposing any change tonight. If we consider or look at the average property tax bill for a residential resident in the city of Peoria, 55% of their bill goes to school districts, 32% goes to a variety of special districts in Maricopa County, and then just 13% goes to the city of Peoria. So tonight, there is no action required, as Mr. Tyne said, and we are asking council to hold a public hearing on the proposed property tax levy for fiscal year 2022.
Okay. So again, we are not increasing our property tax. We are simply not increasing our property tax.
Correct.
And holding a hearing about it. All right. I declare this public hearing open. Are there any members of the public who would like to address this item? Seeing none, I declare this public hearing closed. Council, are there any discussion, questions, comments? All right, seeing none, this item is for discussion only, so there is no council action required this evening. Thank you. We are now moving on to an item that is not a public hearing. 32R is intergovernmental agreement, Arizona Department of Transportation, Lake Pleasant Parkway Adaptive Signal Control Technology. Mr. Tyne.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. And Chris Lemke, our city traffic engineer, will be here and is accompanied by Adina Lund, our development and engineering director, to present an intergovernmental agreement for your consideration, really intended to improve on traffic signal timing and reduce congestion on Lake Pleasant Parkway. So I'll pass it to Mr. Lemke.
Thank you, Mr. Tyne. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Mr. Tyne did a great job explaining what the project is about, so I don't know if I need to get into it. Well, thank you for letting me talk about traffic. I get excited when I talk about traffic. I'm the city traffic engineer, so that's my job. I'm here to share with you some advancements of what's currently happening in the traffic realm. And it's pretty exciting. Technology is off the chart right now, and I'm going to share with you this project, and we really want to take it off consent and present it to you so the council and the mayor has a better understanding of what we're trying to do with our traffic signal systems and how we coordinate our corridors. So specifically, what would this project do? It will procure and install adaptive signal control technology, which is also known, okay, so I'm sure that helps a little bit. So this project will procure and install an adaptive signal control technology, which is also known as ASCT, at 22 traffic signals along Lake Pleasant Parkway. The north limit will be Loop 303. The southern limit will be Union Hill. So it's not just Lake Pleasant Parkway, it's also 83rd Avenue. And so it'd probably be prudent to have me discuss a little bit what ASCT is, Adaptive Signal Control Technology. And I thought it would be best to discuss it using an example. And so imagine yourself traveling on Lake Pleasant Parkway. You're stopped at Happy Valley. You're going southbound. You're at a red light, and you're waiting for your green light. And you finally get your green light. You go through the intersection. You're heading southbound. The next signal is a quarter mile away. It's Hatfield. And you have to stop again. You got a red light. Well, that's what this project will help with. This project is going to help by connecting the 22 traffic signals along Lake Pleasant Parkway. It will communicate. All the signals are going to communicate with each other. It's going to measure real-time traffic conditions and provide that information to the signals upstream and downstream with each other. All the signals are connected. And by doing that, and this is the key, the adaptive system will automatically change the signal timing to be responsive to the existing traffic conditions out on Lake Pleasant Parkway. That's what this project's about. And so if you go back to the example I provided, when we implement this project, instead of stopping at Hatfield, you should see a green light at Hatfield and all the other signals as you head southbound, and then also as you head northbound from 303 to Union Hills. Now, not every time you go down the corridor, you'll get a green light every single time, but we try to group the cars together, we platoon them together, and the groups of cars should hit a green light all the way down the system. And that's the goal of this technology. And so how does that differ from what we do today? Today we implement a time-of-day timing plan based on historic counts that we collect in the field. And so basically we collect counts during the AM peak hour, PM peak hour, off-peak, weekend, and we make timing decisions based on those historic counts. And those work pretty well as long as you don't have any anomalies on the traffic patterns on Lake Pleasant Parkway. But once there's a change, construction, detours because of accidents, school traffic, say basis school traffic, those are anomalies that our signal system isn't really geared up to address very well. And so that's the beauty of the adaptive system, because it's measuring real-time traffic conditions and adjusting the signal timing on the fly, where our time-of-day plans simply cannot handle that. We're excited about this project because of the budget also. The city of Peoria was fortunate to receive a federal CMAQ grant to implement this project, and with this grant, the city's responsibility is 5.7% of the total project cost. Plus, we pay ADOT $30,000 to administer the project on our behalf. ADOT has to administer the project because there's federal funding involved. And so the good news is Our share of the project is $114,185, and we were able to leverage that $114,000 and change into a $1.5 million project with the CMAQ grant. And so we're pretty excited about that. We do have other adaptive projects in the city. One is currently installed on Bell Road from 99th Avenue to 73rd Avenue. It crosses multiple jurisdictions. We have 4 signals on Bell Road that's part of that system. Maricopa County administered that project. And that was in 2018. And the county actually did before and after studies, and the results were phenomenal during the weekdays. They saw more than a 50% reduction in delay and an improvement of 11% in travel times along that corridor during the weekday. The weekend, we saw improvements, but not as much as the weekday. And the reason why we didn't see as much improvement on the weekend is because the adaptive system starts losing its effectiveness as you approach saturation flow conditions on the road. What does that mean? Bell Road during the weekend has heavier volumes, and there's no gaps in traffic. And so when there's no gaps in traffic, you're starting to get close to saturation. And the signals have to provide timing to the side streets. It just can't give green time to Bell Road the whole time. We got to serve 99th Avenue. I'm sorry, 91st Avenue. We got to serve 87th. And so it has to cut off the traffic volume at that time, and there was no gap. And that's why on the weekend, we didn't quite see the results that we did during the weekday. The other adaptive project that is currently in construction right now and being implemented is on Olive Avenue. It's also Dunlap in Phoenix. It goes from 115th Avenue to 35th Avenue. It includes 27 traffic signals. And so the beauty of these projects, the Bell Road and Olive, it's multiple jurisdictions. It's not just City of Peoria. It's the ADOT traffic interchange. It's the county, Glendale, Phoenix, and we got them all involved to try to help the traffic flow on Olive, on that particular project, and also on Bell Road up north. That project is currently in construction, and we should see some results by this fall, where we'll start testing it and tweaking it to optimize the conditions of the adaptive system. And so let's get into IGA terms a little bit. I just want to highlight a few of them. ADOT's going to act as a designated agent for the city. They will also prepare all the federal required documentation to FHWA, which is the Federal Highway Administration, for procurement of the project. And then ADOT will also conduct the final inspection to verify installation and everything was in compliance with the state and FHWA requirements. The city will designate ADOT as the city's authorized agent for the project, pay our share of the project of $114,185, but we're also responsible for all costs that are not covered by federal funding. So if the project runs over, we will be responsible for the additional costs to implement this project. And then when it's all said and done, the city will be responsible to maintain and maintain full responsibility of the project after final acceptance. Schedule. Well, in 2018, we applied for the CMAQ grant, and we were successful. Right now, we're preparing documents for procurement that's in design right now. That should be completed by fall. Right now, we're here, spring of 2021, to finalize the IGA. We are planning to install the system around the spring of 2022, and it takes time to test the system and feel comfortable that it's running the way it should, and that takes about a year. It also takes a year to do the pre and post study, because we don't want to invest $1.5 million in a system and not know how well it did. So we're going to collect volumes, travel speeds before we install the system, all times a day, morning, peak, afternoon, weekends. And then we're going to do a similar comparison after the system is installed. And we'll be happy to present the results to you when it's all done. And so our staff recommendations, that we recommend A, the adoption of Resolution 2021-48 approving an intergovernmental agreement with the Arizona Department of Transportation, and B, Approve an IGA with ADOT with the purpose to identify the roles and responsibilities of the parties with respect to the project, which will procure and install adaptive signal control technology at 22 traffic signals on Lake Pleasant Parkway, 83rd Avenue, from Loop 303 to Union Hills. And I want to point out, only one vote is needed for both items. And that concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Did you have a question?
I have a question. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Patena.
So let's go back for a second to Lake Pleasant Parkway. I'm assuming that the synchronization of those lights would be according to the posted speed limit. Is that correct?
Mayor and council member, yes and no. So the traffic conditions that are being measured is measuring the actual travel speeds, real world conditions. So, you know, it may be posted, say, 40 miles an hour or 45 miles an hour. Different sections of Lake Pleasant Parkway have different speed limits. What are people actually traveling? And that's part of the assessment and analysis. Because if we say we're going to set all the signals to 40 miles an hour, but everybody's going 45 to 50 miles an hour, that grouping of traffic will still hit the next red light, and that's not what we're trying to accomplish. And so it will be based on the actual real-world conditions measured in the field.
Well, I think that's a great idea. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find anybody on Lake Pleasant Parkway, sorry, Chief, doing 40 miles an hour. So, yeah, I think that's a great idea. Thank you.
Yes, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you go back to your first slide with all the dots?
Absolutely. Oh, maybe not. I'm going to need some assistance. It's the third one, I believe. Okay.
Right there. There you go. So when it ends down at 83rd and Union Hills, are we working with our other agencies, ADOT and Glendale, so that their traffic lights are going to adapt to the traffic that we're now changing?
Mayor and Vice Mayor, this, if you notice the exhibit, there's a green dot right there at 83rd and Union Hills. The project will not install the adaptive system right at Union Hills. And the reason for that is we have Union Hills supposedly coordinated with City of Glendale because they have the next signal to the east that serves Walmart, and then ADOT for the interchange right there, and then you have City of Glendale again. And so we've been working with them to address Union Hills on a time-of-day timing plan, which, again, is not reflective of real-world conditions. Union Hills is on our list to consider for a future adaptive system, and it'd be a good location for a future adaptive system because it involves multiple jurisdictions. What we run into is anytime we want to change a timing plan, time-of-day plan with another jurisdiction, we have to call them, coordinate with them, set our clocks, set the offsets, and say if they make one tweak to that timing plan, it impacts all the other timing plans at the other cities, other jurisdictions. If we put in the adaptive system, all the signals are communicating with each other, and it's actually measuring real-world conditions. So Union Hills is one of the future considerations for our adaptive project.
Yeah, that's my only concern is just knowing that area as I do, I can see us getting everything down there smoothly and then having a hiccup right there. And I'm shocked that the other agencies have issues. Thank you so much.
Anyone else? All right. I just want to congratulate you on getting such great beneficial grants. These are wonderful programs, and it really stretches our dollars just to the peak. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Mayor.
So is there a motion?
A motion. Second.
Council, please vote. And it passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is called to the public for non-agenda items. If you wish to address the City Council, please complete a speaker request form and place it in the bin next to the speaker's podium. And I have received no speaker request forms. So we will now move on to reports from City Manager, Mr. Tyne.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. I have 3 items that I wanted to speak to, and I'll have, fortunately, some additional video to assist me through the process. First off, with regard to the 2021 Best Place to Live, Work, and Play, Peoria was recently awarded with the exciting honor and received the ranking of the #1 city in Arizona to live, work, and play by Ranking Arizona for 2021. Copies of the Ranking Arizona magazine are at each of the council seats, so if you do want to show the audience, feel free, and are marked to the page of the city's rankings. And in acknowledgement of this prestigious recognition, it is an honor to present as well a plaque to the mayor and council as a visual reminder of this award. So I'll make sure to pass it on. It's a little heavy, so I'll do it after the meeting. But we also have a video to show you in recognition of this as well. So we'll play that right now. Great, thank you for that. I'll move quickly, if I may, to the next item. We have one other video that we'll show you shortly, which is to talk a little bit about some technology that will be coming to Peoria residents just in the upcoming few months, and that is a one-stop online bill pay process. The entity, it's Invoice Cloud, and they provide a smart, complete, simple, and secure electronic payment solution to the city. Simple-to-use platform that engages our customers through the payment process will help to deliver paperless billing and e-payment adoption rates. Phase 1 of this project implementation will see our utility system, and so our utility payments will go live in June of 2021. Development services related fees in October 21, and then library, police, and community services, parks and recreation fees coming online in 2022. So we have a small glimpse of that as well. Thank you. Needless to say, very excited about that. We think it'll play huge dividends to our residents. And then lastly, this evening I wanted to show a video introducing the Mayor and Council's summer reading program. This council goes above and beyond to improve the literacy amongst the next generation of Peoria residents. And so we're very proud to illustrate this. And thank you, Council, for all of your effort on this. So a quick video for our residents to see on that.
Hi, I'm Mayor Kathy Carlett, and I am pleased to announce that my 6th annual summer reading program, Peoria Reads, Today a Reader, Tomorrow a Leader, begins on May 29th. I created this summer reading program to help encourage our children and future leaders to develop a love of reading, and I am excited to kick off the summer with this valuable program. Over the next 2 months, we have fun events scheduled, story times at the new Pop-Up Peoria in Park West, and many chances to win some great prizes. I hope you'll stop by a Peoria library today and pick up your bookmarks and join us on this exciting reading adventure.
And I just wanted to mention a thank you to our city council for all of your time spent over the last year in developing the fiscal year 2022 budget. Obviously, a huge achievement for you to go through all of that, especially with the conditions that we all had to live with. So wanted to thank you all for that. And also to recognize Chris Lemke. As you can see, Chris characterizes not only the technical expertise, but the passion for public service that embodies all of our employees, and really helps to show why Peoria really stands out as a community with both our street condition as well as our traffic management system. So thank you to that. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for all of that. And I held on to this because I just need to hold it up for a minute and let everyone see, because you can never brag about this too often, as far as I'm concerned. You know, a lot of cities talk about being the best city to live, work, and play. But as you can see, Peoria has the award for the #1 city in Arizona to live, work, and play. And so we are very, very proud of that. It is our quality of life. It is our fiscal responsibility. It is our city management and our great council. So a lot of aspects go into getting an award like this, and it is truly appreciated and coveted. So we're very pleased to have that. And this evening, we are going to ask our youth council liaisons for one last time to give us a report. And if you would like to just let us know about how your experience has been, we would appreciate hearing that. Mr. Van Winkle?
Of course. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So first, some professional business. The Youth Advisory Board recently started looking at nonprofit organizations to partner with for the next 2021 through 2022 year. The Youth Advisory Board takes pride in our ability to partner with many nonprofits that allow us to achieve our goals and things that we could help them with as well, that youth are able to participate in. Just like this past year, we had Ben's Bells, we had Bloom 365, Tomorrow We Vote, D-Squared Homes for the Homeless, and Heart Pantry. I think that might be it, but and I apologize if I'm missing any, but we were able to do a lot of good work with these nonprofits and to assist them and for them to assist us to be able to make a community impact. And so that is something exciting going on, coming up. And I just want to thank Mayor and Council and anyone who has supported me thus far to be able to not only hold this position, but to be able to grow as a leader, to be able to gain more confidence, and to be able to be more aware of the city around me. It helps me become a better person and to really grow to love every single one of you, every single one of our citizens, because I learn the processes and how things work and how things go on. And I just want to express my gratitude for this position. It's been great. You know, this past year has seemed almost to drag on and almost to go by fast at the same time. It's been definitely different. I am honored to be a part of history, even though I don't know that I should be grateful for the circumstances. But regardless, you know, I have to look at this positively, and I've learned so much, but also I know that our new incoming liaisons will do the same, and I'm so excited for them to take my seat, Sanvi's seat, and we're so proud of them. I know I can speak for both of us, and we're still members on the Youth Advisory Board, so we're still going to keep serving Peoria. I'm going on to work this summer through the City of Peoria Summer Rec Program, so I will continue serving you, and you have served me since day one of living here, and I know you'll continue, so I have no doubts about that. Thank you very much for everything, and this has been a truly great experience. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Very well said, as usual. Thank you very much. You impress us every week. Ms. Tawari?
So one report from me, last Youth Advisory Board, we had our elections to vote in our new vice chair and chair, and we were also able to meet some of the new Youth Advisory Board members, so kind of gearing up for the new year. And I would just like to express my gratitude as well for this position. Never did I ever think that at 16 years old I would be able to sit at the dais and understand what a zoning map is. So the experiences that I've been able to get here have been amazing, and just getting to know every single council member and being able to meet everybody has been an amazing experience. And this position has allowed me to connect with my own youth the people that I represent, and they've been able to ask me questions about what I do and the things that I learn here, and just being able to answer those questions and hopefully allow our new generation to have a passion for politics and being and work in the city government. I really hope that I've been able to do that, and it's certainly increased my own passion for the city government, and being able to learn about how everything works has just been fascinating. And like Dom said, I will still continue to be on the Youth Advisory Board. I graduate next year, so one year left. But I just want to say thank you so much for this opportunity, and I'm so grateful for all the experiences that I've been able to get here, so thank you.
Thank you. I am sure that the next youth council liaisons under you, they have big shoes to fill, and you have been a tremendous inspiration. And it's just wonderful for us to see the next generation of leaders coming up, and we thank you, really. It's wonderful, and I'm so happy that you like to visit and view zoning maps. And, you know, we need more municipal junkies. That's what we need. And with that, we are adjourned.